Realignment, Echo Star. When Kaoru wakes up in the hospital, all the shattered pieces of his heart lay in his lap, ready for discarding or fixing. Like the deck and wheels and screws of his beloved Carla, waiting to be put back together, better than before. He spent so long chasing after Ayanosuke. That last little piece of hope had always held him back. Adam had shattered it. Carla, and subsequently Kaoru, had never been so grateful. He could finally move on. Could finally let himself be happy and whole. The first thing Kaoru does is check himself out of the hospital early and go to see a Lelouch. He doesn't argue or beat around the bush with himself about it, like he would have even just a day ago. Around Kojiro is where he wants to be, where he belongs, so that's where he's going. Kojiro is frustrated with him. He can tell Kaoru shouldn't be out of the hospital so early, and Kojiro was supposed to pick him up. Acknowledging, he lets Kojiro take him home above the restaurant, lets Kojiro carry him up the stairs, lets Kojiro dress him in one of the gorilla's largest, softest sweaters, allows Kojiro to tuck him in bed, and afterwards, Kaoru drags him in beside, curling up close. Safe and warm and dependable. Everything Ayanosuke had never been, and everything Kaoru knew Kojiro would always be. And Kojiro tries again, like he had a million times before, and this time, Kaoru smiles privately into his shoulder. Kaoru, you know, tomorrow, you thick-headed gorilla, Kaoru murmurs, pulling Kojiro's muscled arm around him tightly. He lets himself tuck his face into Kojiro's neck, because he can now. Can't you wait one more day? And Kojiro huffs a laugh that rustles Kaoru's hair, daringly pressing a kiss to the top of his head, presses against Kaoru's boundaries that will dissolve completely tomorrow. Strokes gentle fingers through his bangs, pushing them out of his face. Kaoru allows it without bitching because tomorrow. When Cherry had been about to beef with Adam, and Joe just had to talk to him, dragging Kaoru and Kojiro into S like he always did, Cherry had felt both a panic and a calm settle over him. The panic of, no, not yet, wait, and the calm of, once this is over, yes, I'll be ready. The knowledge that once Cherry won this beef against Adam, Kaoru and Kojiro were finally going to be together. When Kojiro leaves for Italy, he tries to confess for the first time. Kaoru, don't. Kaoru interrupts, voice shaking the tiniest bit, a sound that only Kojiro would know. Still a little broken over Adam, Ayanosuke, the fucker, leaving and taking a piece of Kaoru with him. He knows what Kojiro is trying to say, but Kaoru can't. He's not himself, he's not whole, and he's nowhere near ready. Don't you dare. You're going to Italy, and you're going to learn your trade, and you're going to have fun and grow, and don't you fucking dare wait for me. You'll come home, and I'll be there, but don't you dare wait for me. Don't hold yourself back like this. And Kojiro had frowned, but acquiesced. And because he was a meat-headed asshole, he technically didn't dare. But he found his own way through Kaoru's walls. I'll go to school. I'll learn. I'll have fun, Kojiro says dutifully. Kaoru inhales sharply and nods, a little settled. And then I'll come home, and I'll make you carbonara, You fucker, Kaoru thinks viciously. If it's still as shitty as ever, I'll send you back to Italy permanently. I love you too. Kaoru manages to visit Kojiro after a year of being apart. A year of hard work, and Kaoru relearning himself and rebuilding himself, regardless of missing pieces in Italy and America. Rebuilding himself is going to be pretty awful though, especially without Kojiro around. So he's been building something else. He puts himself together in the most basic way he knows how, without effort, and focuses on Carla. Kaoru was pissed at Kojiro for leaving so soon after Adam did, that he considered not responding to Kojiro's texts and emails. But the ache in his chest from the absence of Kojiro made him desperate to keep their connection, so that Kojiro couldn't forget him with the attractive scene of Italy. They're unfortunately ridiculously codependent. No one else wants to put up with them besides the other, and people are giving them weird looks when, instead of embracing at the airport, they instantly drop into casual insults. Kaoru, you look so pretentious. The way Kojiro is looking him up and down, practically leering, it comes out like, why are you so gorgeous? Kaoru blushes and snaps. And you look like a JoJo character. Why the fuck did you get hot? I had to live up to the name. Joe. It was the dumbest S name, and Kaoru still hated it. You have bigger boobs than the women you date, Kaoru says snidely. Thanks for noticing, precious. Kojiro snarks back. It's like no time has passed between them, the way they settle back into their banter. Except, some things are different. A year of growth will do that. At least your ham hock of a shoulder is good for something, Kaoru says drowsily, drunk and leaning against Kojiro's shoulder after a day of sightseeing in Florence. The shoulder with the tattoo. The tattoo of a sun that Kaoru had messily scribbled on some random piece of homework that Kojiro had kept like an asshole and got it permanently etched onto his body. Kaoru's mad about it. He told Kojiro to grow up, not get hot. You look really good, Kaoru, Kojiro says softly in return, not rising to the bait for once. Kaoru's mouth twists in uncertainty, self-deprecating. He didn't used to be like this, but it's like the older he gets, the more the anxiety increases. You think so? Without the piercings and now with the yukata? Boring, he thinks. Traditional, in sharp contrast to his punk days of high school, because he didn't know how to be that Kaoru anymore. Any piercings he had left were carefully hidden. No clients would ever see them. There was really only one person he wanted to, anyway. It's different, but you've grown up. Sophisticated. Like a real Sakurayashiki sensei. You got a tattoo, Kaoru says. Only a little jealous. I've regressed and you've evolved. Because I missed you. And people don't really care about tattoos around here, dumbass. Hey, let's get you one while you're here. So Kaoru gets a tattoo in Italy, and Kojiro holds his hair back while he throws up from the alcohol and pain afterwards. He only laughs a little, so when Kaoru punches him in the shoulder for it, he pulls it. Then Kojiro laughs fully, and Kaoru sneers, and Kojiro throws a wet cloth at his face before tossing Kaoru on his bed and sliding in beside him. Slumped across each other as kids, back to back as teenagers, and comfortably wrapped in each other as adults. Sharing a bed has never been strange to them. Kaoru hates that he's grateful for it. Kaoru hates how just the simple act of Kojiro running his fingers through his hair could reduce Kaoru to a puddle of contentment, and he hadn't realized how much he'd missed it until he visited Kojiro in Italy and Kojiro did it again as they sat on the balcony, easy as anything, and is doing it again as they rest beside each other. Kojiro's fingers had been in his hair for years. If he wasn't brushing Kaoru's bangs out of his eyes, he was tying Kaoru's hair in a ponytail or braiding it back. Kaoru didn't used to think much about his hair until he realized how much Kojiro paid attention to it. It made him take better care of it than he did in middle school, when he barely ran a brush through it before running out the door. And when Kojiro bitched about finding Kaoru's hair everywhere and about the split ends, he'd let Kojiro trim it for him. And without fail, the asshole always said, "Whoops," as if he had just cut out a huge chunk just to bug Kaoru. Kojiro got restless easily. He always had to be doing something, while Kaoru could just sit and be still, thinking. It's why Kaoru usually ended up placid against Kojiro's side, while he ran his fingers through Kaoru's hair. The fidgeting used to drive Kaoru crazy to no end, until he had figured out ways to distract Kojiro. It just so happened to work to his advantage. Kojiro usually ended up massaging away headaches without even realizing. Kojiro practiced hairstyles on Kaoru so that he could get his twin sisters ready for their dance recitals when his parents couldn't. He's the reason why Kaoru started taking better care of his hair, if only to stop hearing Kojiro bitch about how brutally he treated it. Kojiro once curled Kaoru's hair with his mother's curling iron, and Kaoru basked in the attention of his hair being played with for hours. As annoying as it is to have long hair while skating, it's worth it for all the times Kojiro has his hair in it. "You're so pretty, Kaoru," Kojiro mumbles sleepily, twirling a curl around his finger. Kaoru flushes and buries his face in Kojiro's chest. Kojiro is the reason why Kaoru started taking care of himself. Anxiety stole Kaoru's sleep like a kleptomaniac, and few things could bring it back. One of them was Kala, although if Kaoru got on the wrong track, she could just as easily become a distraction that led to more insomnia. The other was Kojiro, and it pissed Kaoru off to no end. He couldn't be around all the time, easing the non-stop thoughts that kept Kaoru up. Medication helped as much as it could, as well as therapy that Kaoru couldn't find it in himself to keep attending. And Kojiro was always reminding him to take it, because he couldn't force Kaoru back into therapy, but he could put Kaoru in a headlock and mess up his hair until Kaoru took the tiny pill. Kaoru could tell him time and time again that that was what he had Kala for, and then Kala would chime in and say, "Master, it's time for your medication." "Smarter than a robot," Kojiro would crow triumphantly, as though it were a feat to tell time. "Kala's an AI," Kaoru would snap back, and choke down his pill while glaring at both of them. Sometimes it was Kojiro himself that gave Kaoru anxiety, the way that Kojiro would look at him sometimes. It made Kaoru's breath quicken and stomach swoop like he was about to take off at S. And then Kojiro would keep looking, sometimes soft and fond, sometimes nostalgic and smirking, and sometimes dark and intense. And then Kojiro would feed him and look away, and Kaoru could breathe again, sometimes grateful and sometimes disappointed, and sometimes both at once. The benefits of Kala greatly outweigh the risks, and Kaoru has made his peace with them anyway. Kojiro worries that Kaoru will become too dependent on Kala and forget how to function like a human being. But after Cherry's beef with Adam, Kojiro filled in all his admittance paperwork, and when he couldn't remember or didn't know, he had Kala to ask. Kala, who hated Kojiro with a passion, but recognized how important and useful she was to Kaoru. The lullaby Kala plays is one Kaoru grew up hearing in the Nanajo household. Kojiro's mother would sing it as she moved in the kitchen, and over her little shadow, Kojiro would be humming it along with her. He still hums it sometimes. Never at Ciel Lelouch, but only in the soft mornings when he's making Kaoru breakfast. And when Kala can't sleep, Kala plays a shamisen instrumental version. Throughout the years, while Kojiro trained to be a chef in Italy, and Kaoru became a calligraphy master who dabbled in AI production, they took vacations together around the world, so they wouldn't lose each other. And in Venice, in LA, in Paris, again and again, Kojiro had tried. "Why not?" he'd ask, brow furrowed when Kaoru said no. And Kaoru would say, "Because I said so." Kojiro had accepted that every time, because they were Kaoru and Kojiro, and no one knew them like they did each other. So Kojiro at least knew to keep trying. He just didn't know when Kaoru would say yes. And unfortunately, neither did Kaoru. In Paris, their last trip planned before Kaoru came home to Okinawa, Kaoru finally had some sort of answer, even though it felt just as wrong as it did right. "Because I'm not ready." It was the truth, and not. Kaoru was rebuilt, and Kojiro was coming home after this. There wasn't much else that Kaoru could do. He should be ready, but he still doesn't feel it. Kaoru worries that one day, Kojiro was going to get sick of being rejected before even confessing. Paris was the city of romance, and Kojiro had pulled out all the stops. A taste of what real romance with Kojiro would be like. Grown up and still in love. Kaoru had never felt his unexplainable resolve waver, and wanted to give in so bad, even though the thought felt wrong. Not yet, not right, for some horrible, frustrating reason, and Kojiro had simply nodded and said, "Okay." Like Kaoru's horrible brain made sense to him, when it didn't even to Kaoru. When Kojiro held an umbrella over them and pulled Kaoru into his side, Kaoru wanted to kiss him. And when Kojiro fought and shoved at him to beat him to getting into the store first, Kaoru still wanted to kiss him. His brain was stupid indeed. Kaoru hates Kojiro's strong shoulders that could hold Kaoru and the world up at the same time. He hates how gentlemanly Kojiro is to every woman he meets, and how even Joe is barely sleazier than Kojiro himself tends to be. He hates that Kojiro is shit with money, because it was about feeding people and making them happy, rather than turning a profit. He hates that Kojiro smiles so freely at everyone he meets, and that Kojiro smiles softly in Kaoru's kitchen. He hates how their laughs meld together, beginning and ending at the same time, because they had known each other for so long. He hates that Kojiro touches him like he's an extension of Kojiro, natural as everything. He hates that if he thinks too long about Kojiro, it turns into thinking about his shoulders, and his abs, and his smile, and his strength, and his kindness, and turns Kaoru into a blushing, angry mess. He hates they've known each other for nearly 2 decades, and he still doesn't know how Kojiro's kiss feels, only how it looks from afar. He hates that it's his own fault. He hates that Kojiro would be pissed at him for thinking that. He hates that Kojiro is so talented at cooking, because it means he cooks for others who aren't Kaoru. He hates that Kojiro belongs to other people that aren't him, that Kojiro's thoughts aren't filled solely with Kaoru. He hates that Kojiro is possessive, but not jealous, and that he lets things go if they needed to be. Kaoru, on the other hand, is like a dog with a bone. If it was his, he dug his teeth into it and drew blood if it tried to leave. It was just unfortunate that Adam drew blood too. He hates how he'd taken a million risks throughout his life. Skateboarding, piercings, calligraphy, coding. But this is one thing he couldn't just leap into. That this is the one thing that scares him enough to not try. Kaoru took risks that Kojiro wouldn't until he was sure about landing a trick, and ended up breaking all sorts of bones. There are a number of times that Kojiro carried Kaoru on his back, bitching at Kaoru about taking too many risks skateboarding, while Kaoru reached right back in his ear that Kojiro didn't take enough. But Kaoru still couldn't risk this. Their last night in Paris, Kojiro drunkenly mumbles, "You're my son, Kaoru." "I love you too," Kaoru thinks. Someday. Soon. On the beach, Kaoru has a dream that he's Nanjo Kaoru-sensei, Kojiro's little artistic housewife that paints on their back porch. It's always sunny, and Kojiro-sama kisses him on the cheek before leaving for work each day. A squeeing muscle man delivers pink roses to him every morning from Kojiro-sama. They have triplets that are half cat, and they call them Mia-chan, and Langa-chan, and Neki-chan, and they call them Mama-nyan and Papa-nyan in return. Kaoru wakes up with a horrified shudder, feeling a dark presence over him. A demon, probably, coming to suck out his soul after bestowing that nightmare upon him. It's Kojiro standing in front of him, reaching. And Kaoru thinks stupidly, "Ah, here comes Kojiro-sama for his kiss. The kids better be in bed." Kojiro the demon picks him up and tosses him into the water, yukata and all. Then it's Kaoru who's the demon, strangling the life out of Kojiro and destroying his stupid ugly shirts with inked insults. In the hospital, Kaoru thinks. It burns to see Kojiro's arms wrapped around a woman or two, arms that Kaoru so badly wants wrapped around his own waist, hand possessive on a hip. Kojiro is quietly possessive like that. Out of the two of them, Kaoru is the more likely to get into a fist fight, while Kojiro is confident in his words and posture. Stable but yielding. Malleable but not taken advantage of. He would bend but not break. He isn't vulnerable like Kaoru. He lets things roll off his back if they aren't meant to be. Kojiro wasn't violent like Kaoru was. He'd never throw the first punch. He'd only throw the second to pull Kaoru out of the shit he'd gotten himself into. Kojiro is much better at emotions. He can rein them in and be empathetic and passionate and calm whenever the situation calls for it. Kaoru, on the other hand, basically operates between politely disinterested and a shimmering rage that could often overboil quickly. Dealing with people is exhausting, and Kaoru is glad he can hand that responsibility over to Kojiro for the most part. People are stupid and picky, and demand his attention as a calligrapher. They're both dedicated to the point of excess. Kaoru shows up at the end of the night at Ciel Lelouch to make sure Kojiro doesn't spend all night in the kitchen. And Kojiro shows up at Sakurayashiki Calligraphy to make sure Kaoru isn't pulling an all-night, or working on Kala without eating. Kaoru takes on multiple high-earning commissions, regardless of his liking, so that he can splurge on vacations and a down payment, and if anything in the restaurant broke down, because Kojiro doesn't worry about things like that. He worries about Kaoru instead. Kojiro has lovely, strong hands that Kaoru has felt upon nearly every part of his body. Kaoru hates it when people are behind him. It kicks up his anxiety. But when Kojiro is behind him, beside him, around him, the anxiety dulls, and Kaoru feels safe. An arm around his shoulders, a hand at the small of his back. Kojiro behind him, tying his hair back, tying his obi, gentle and sure. Intimate, like no one else has ever been. Kojiro has Kaoru tattooed on his shoulder already, but Kaoru wants his name splashed in calligraphy across Kojiro's back. Something undeniably Kaoru, selfish and possessive, that would let everyone know. Large and likely to get Kojiro banned from every onsen in the country. And some days, instead, he wants the tiniest iteration of his name, just above Kojiro's heart, small and secret and protective, and Kojiro's under his rib in return. When Kaoru finally says yes, it's going to be so good because they know each other like the back of their hands. And it's going to be so fun because it's something new that they haven't done together. Exhilarating, like skating beside each other. They've been dancing around this for years, Kojiro even longer. Kaoru is done letting them. Done letting himself hold him back. When Cherry skated, Joe got a howdy to the face that always ended up draping across his shoulders at the finish line. And when Kaoru stayed the night at Kojiro's, Kaoru got a cotton soft sweater to the face in return. They always came back to each other. The day after Kaoru escapes the hospital, he lets Kojiro run him a bath, wash his hair for him and make him breakfast, lunch and dinner. Lets Kojiro help him bathe and clean his hair with gentle fingers. It's not the first, or Kaoru suspects, the last time that Kojiro will wash his hair for him. Kaoru lets himself settle into being spoiled and coddled. Everything Kojiro has tried to do for him, he lets it happen. He indulges in it. He lets Kojiro dry him with a warm towel, comb his hair and braid it back. Kojiro smooths through Kaoru's wet hair, gentle as a summer breeze, and Kaoru goes for broke. You'll make a fine house husband one day. Kaoru sighs, eyes closed in bliss as Kojiro runs a comb over his scalp. Oh yeah? Kojiro snorts. And just who am I marrying? Me, obviously. Kaoru hears the intake of breath behind him, feels the studded paws of Kojiro's hands behind him. Oh yeah? Kojiro recovers, resumes combing through Kaoru's hair. When are we getting married? He's playing along, except Kaoru's not playing. He's planned this for years. Some things have changed, but for years now, he knows he's going to marry Kojiro in his bones. Late winter, not this coming, but next. They've loved each other for 2 decades, been in love for nearly 15 years, have traveled far and wide in cramped hostels, but have yet to officially live together. They'll need time to adjust to dating and living together before marriage. Cherry blossom season? Kojiro asks. Obviously. And will we be wearing traditional dress? I will be. A shiromuku? Kojiro teases. Ora furiso de. I'll murder you at the altar. And who are we inviting? My family and yours. The kids? If they prove they can behave themselves. Do I get to make any decisions? You can decide on the food and whether or not you'll show up. Oh, so I do get a choice in this. You can certainly think so. Are you gonna cry, Kaoru? Not as much as you. You do already handle my finances. Nothing much will change. We'll be in love, Kaoru thinks. No, they're already in love. They'll be together, officially. Nothing much will change indeed. Kaoru's mouth twists. I kind of wish Adam had come back and beat some sense into me earlier. No, Kojiro says, startlingly fierce, coming around to face him. Hey, no, absolutely not. I don't care how long we've waited. I'd wait forever for you. He would, and he has, and it makes Kaoru feel like an asshole and a coward. You know, it's always been you. Kaoru breathes out shakily. I'm sorry that I had to deal with this before us. Just because we weren't together doesn't mean I didn't cherish all the time we've spent together. It doesn't make it any less. I'd wait forever if it meant you got your closure from him. Kaoru flushes horribly, and he avoids Kojiro's eyes. Aww, Kaoru-koi. Kojiro smirks. Kaoru feels his face go completely scarlet, but he won't let that stand. Absolutely not. Kaoru-hime, I can't wait to be a widower. Kojiro is gonna call him every unbearable endearment under the sun, and Kaoru is gonna blush every time and pretend he hates it. He's gonna start with all the Japanese ones, then move on to Italian and French and English. Kaoru is gonna have to find the least blush-inducing endearment he can say, because like hell it wasn't a competition that Kojiro was throwing at his feet. Mostly, he knows that Kojiro is finally gonna say his name, with all the affection that Kaoru has made him stay quiet about all those years. Kojiro is gonna cook breakfast, while Kaoru sleepily clings onto his back. He's probably gonna hand-feed Kaoru, like the insufferable bastard he is. Kojiro feeds stray cats like he feeds Kaoru. Gentle hands that stayed carefully in their own space, knowing how skittish some things could be. Fuck. They're going to get a cat. They're going to find a traditional house close to Ciel Luz that Kaoru can run his calligraphy business out of. A semi-traditional house with a kotatsu because Kaoru got cold easily, and Kojiro liked to blast the air conditioning. Cherry is going to sniff haughtily at Joe's fangirls draping themselves over him, and Kaoru is going to get to drag Kojiro to bed after S, biting his claim into Kojiro's neck until Kojiro calls him a jealous vampire. Joe and Cherry are going to have to beef over terms set by Kojiro and Kaoru, stupid and childish, and then probably intimate. Are we going to go with Nanzo or Sakurayashiki? Kojiro asks, kneeling down in front of Kaoru, arms settling across Kaoru's lap, warm and heavy. You take mine and I'll take yours, and both of our mothers will be happy they have the better son. Kaoru had gotten really good at cleaning dishes after his mother heard how much the Nanjo family fed him, and Nanjo-san had loved him ever since. His own parents had loved Kojiro since Kaoru had gotten his first piercing, and Kojiro hadn't followed suit. True. Kojiro takes Kaoru's hands in his, and Kaoru feels his heart beat in triple time. Kaoru. Kojiro laughs quietly, as though he can't help himself. Effortlessly handsome and charming and warm and tender. Kaoru is a little mesmerized. Kaoru, you nerd. You have this all planned, but you forgot something important. I didn't forget anything, you oversized gorilla. Kaoru snaps, certainly less mesmerized. Kaoru, you forgot will you marry me? Kaoru feels his heart stop at the question, even though Kojiro wasn't really asking him. Oh, well, I planned the rest of it. You could stand to contribute. Kojiro's face is so fond, looking up at Kaoru. Kaoru, I love you. Will you marry me? And as Kojiro kisses him gently, Kaoru feels those broken pieces inside of him rise up and realign, melded together with streaks of gold. Umake. You know, back when you were in love with Adam. When I was what? Kaoru says flatly. When we were 17 and you tripped that one time and he caught you and your eyes went all sparkly. But my eyes did not go all sparkly. Kaoru hisses. You were actually so brain damaged. You totally wanted to kiss him. Oh my god, so I had a tiny infatuation when he caught me once. Did you fucking forget all the times you caught me? That was different. It sure was, Kaoru says snidely. So different. I wanted him to kiss me then, and I wanted you to kiss me all the times you caught me. Oh wait, there's a difference. You were always catching me, so I always wanted you to kiss me. How was I supposed to know that? You were so unbelievably stupid. In love with Adam. Oh my god. Like you didn't want him to kiss you even once after you landed a trick in front of him. Truly, my biggest regret is not kissing you when we were kids and you had that lip ring. You would have bitched about the taste of metal ruining your chef's palate. Don't ruin my childhood dreams. I've still got other piercings you can kiss.
God, I love you.